Welcome to Elevation Recovery. In this video, we're going to be covering the art of tapering off opioids. This is a very in-depth tutorial on opioid tapering and some of the ins and outs of this. So here's an overview of the tapering process. We start on the left with optimize. This means getting as healthy as possible before starting the taper. For instance, people that are addicted to drinking, energy drinks and Red Bulls and coffee and sugar throughout the day, and their diet's horrible. I wouldn't even recommend someone like that to even probably consider starting to taper off of, if they've been on methadone for 10 years and they want to start tapering off. If your body's in really bad shape, it's hard to put your body through tapering. So optimizing can be a good first start for some people, where they start to make better diet choices, better exercise habits, take specific targeted neuronutrients and other types of supplements. And then the next step is start. This is beginning the taper and reducing your dosage slow enough to avoid shock to the brain and body. So when you go through a cold turkey opioid detox, that wreaks havoc on your central nervous system. Opioids are CNS depressing substances, and once you become dependent on them, that means your neurons have adapted to the presence of the drug. And if you go through a cold turkey withdrawal, that means that your blood opioid concentration is going to drop so fast that it goes into the CNS rebound effect, meaning your central nervous system, instead of being depressed, goes rebound in the opposite direction. You have central nervous system fight or flight response, and your amygdala goes crazy. The fight or flight response activates, and you have just cascades of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, causing insomnia, restless legs, anxiety, panic attacks, and a number of other symptoms. So tapering, and specifically tapering slowly, and doing other things to support your brain and body during this, and your mind, these things can all help to offset and mitigate symptoms. So the best way to prevent withdrawal symptoms when you're transitioning off opioids is to taper slowly. Now, tapering's not for everybody. Some people really would do best checking into a really awesome medical detox facility, or another type of detox, like an alternative medical detox or a home detox. So tapering is a process that is usually reserved for people that have the discipline to actually take the amount of medicine that they're supposed to take while it keeps getting lower. Don't worry, I'm going to teach you how to be able to do this effectively, and if this is still not a good process for you, don't worry, because there's other types of ways to quit opioids. You don't have to taper. There are amazing types of outpatient and inpatient medical detox facilities now, using things from medicines like hardcore prescription medications such as gabapentin, etc., to even things like natural medications like NAD plus infusion therapy. But this video is about tapering, so let's keep it on tapering. It's a big enough training as it is. So by reducing your dosage slowly, maybe every 7 days you reduce your dosage, or every 10 days or 12 days or 14 days, that avoids shock to your brain and body. And the slower you go, usually the easier it is, but not always. Then assess is the next step. So based on how the taper plan goes, you might need to slow up or pause, or you might even be able to go faster. This is about measuring results and progress and adjusting as needed, because you never know how your body and brain are going to respond until you start. Next one is slow up. There's a common rule that I learned when I was a counselor at an opioid treatment program, where we prescribed methadone, Suboxone, Vivitrol, Subutex, and also did outpatient without medications for certain people. But when you start off on a taper, you can typically go a little bit faster or chunk down bigger dosages at the beginning. But once you come down to a really low amount, then you should probably start doing smaller decreases and maybe even slower frequency of decreases. So the lower you go, the slower you go, and that's often good practice. And then finally, transition off. The final step, tapering very slowly at the end, is to transition off completely. Here are some ways to mitigate or prevent even symptoms while tapering opioids, taper elements. And here's some things that you've probably heard of, and maybe some things that you haven't heard of. Who knows? But on the left, we have nutrigenomics. What that means is customized diet, supplements, movements. So that means whether it's exercise or even just going for walks or healthy movements around the home, the way you're moving or not moving, and other lifestyle strategies for intentional and specific goals. And then titrate slowly, we just talked about that. That's the best rule right there. It may take longer, but going down slowly is the #1 thing that helps prevent symptoms from arising, typically. Medicine, so your doctor is able to prescribe medicines to mitigate opioid taper symptoms. These can be especially helpful at the end of the taper and for transitioning off. Some doctors will prescribe medicines, some doctors won't. Some doctors will, but they won't prescribe very good medicines. Some doctor, it's just you never know. But if you have a good relationship with your doctor and they trust you, it's much easier to get these types of medicines, if you even want to use them. You certainly don't have to. And then stabilizing is another way to reduce symptoms while tapering off opioids. This means taking a break from titrating, and what it can do is help your body stabilize more, and this should be used if needed. For instance, if someone's been tapering off long-term opioid use, and they're doing great, and then after a couple of months it gets really hard at one point after a drop, well, they should stabilize. Maybe take a break for a few weeks or maybe even a month, maybe even increase their dose a tiny bit to help them stabilize, re-optimize again, take a break, reduce stress in life until they're at a place where their body and brain and lifestyle stressors is at a spot where they can actually start to reduce again and take it from there. This is not a sprint. This is, for a lot of people, it's more of a marathon than a sprint. Transitioning off an opioid taper. So 2 to 4 weeks off. If you decide to taper off, start thinking how you might be able to take 2 to 4 weeks off from responsibilities so you can rest and repair. This is not mandatory, and I understand this is a luxury and not a lot of people can do this. Very few can take 2 to 4 weeks off. Well, can you take 4 days off? Can you take 7 days off? Can you take 2 weeks off? Can you take a 3-day weekend off? And if you can't take even a 3-day weekend off, what could you do? It's really nice, at least to have peace of mind when you're coming off of a taper, because, if you've done a good job tapering, then it should reduce a lot of the symptoms. But even so, you still have a little bit of opioids in your body, in your brain, in your system. That means that even though you're on a little bit, you're not technically going all the way off. So once you come all the way off the transition and then the opioids come all the way out of your system, you might be able to do well and go to work. But if you have, even at bare minimum, 4 days off, it's nice to be able to transition off and have a few days minimum, I'd hope a few days, at least 2 days maybe, gosh. That way you can kind of see how you're going to respond to coming completely off. And maybe you go into work if you feel good, but at least you have the option to not go into work if you're not feeling good. So again, I know this is a luxury. I know a lot of people can do it, but it can be very helpful, and you'd be amazed at the creativity, the ways you can come up with how you can take time off work. Maybe if you set it far enough in the future, maybe if you get, family to help. There's all sorts of things you could do to become resourceful about this. How long should a taper last on an opioid taper? What's the taper duration? Well, for some situations, 3 to 6 weeks might suffice, but for most, a few months to several months, and for some, even up to a year or maybe even several years. If someone's been on, 15 years of methadone, they're not going to taper off in 3 to 6 weeks and feel good, certainly. Usually those are very multiple year tapers. Here's some examples. So I wanted to make this very in-depth, and I'm going to try to fulfill and live up to that promise. Here's a case study of someone named Marissa that did not taper and paid the price. Cold turkey. So she came off 30 milligrams of buprenorphine. She'd been on that for about 8 years at a medical detox facility. And they treated her acute symptoms there very well with medicines. Once she left detox, she had horrible post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which is the second phase of opioid withdrawal, which lasts a lot longer, but it's typically not as severe. She had it for a long time, 6 months and counting. So that's horrible post-acute withdrawal. Comorbidities, along with generalized anxiety disorder. She also had a few other physical health issues. So when people have comorbidities, especially physical and psychological comorbidities, that kind of synergy between the body and mind ailments makes it very difficult to come off of substances, especially powerful ones like 30 milligrams of buprenorphine. But anyways, middle age. She was in her 40s when she detoxed and worked full-time with no kids. No medicine. She was so over prescriptions and drugs at that point and having doctors put her on medicines. She did not want anything to mitigate the pause symptoms. As a result, she just was almost unfunctional. It was just crazy. Mike, here's a case study of someone that did taper off of opioids and also did other things. Slow taper. He spent 6 months tapering off 100 milligrams of oxycodone after being on it for 4 years. He used the key 3. This is what I refer to as supplements, diet, and exercise. So he took the right supplements for his unique biochemistry and also to offset tapering symptoms. He ate well for his biochemistry, and he did cardio 4 times a week for 20 minutes. He also did neurofeedback training, 6 weeks of training with neurofeedback therapist at the start of the taper. This helped him to really get control of his brain and controlling his brain waves and being able to have heart rate variability training and coherence, like just really good at making him much more calm, biologically, neurologically wired for calm parasympathetic nervous system activation, whereas when you're tapering off opioids, this can lead to sympathetic nervous system fight or flight and makes you more anxious, more vulnerable to physical and emotional pain, psychological stuff. So neurofeedback, supplements, nutrition, exercise, tapering slowly can all really help for a lot of people. Other resources: he also had 2 weeks of clonidine patches prescribed by his doctor, 1 week off of work, his wife's compassion and assistance and understanding and help, deep tissue massages every 2 weeks throughout the taper and for 3 months after transitioning off oxycodone. Let's go back here. Marissa, remember this, didn't taper, went to a medical detox, comorbidities, and didn't use any medicine. Now you look at him, tapered slowly over 6 months, diet, nutrition, exercise, neurofeedback, working with the doctor with some clonidine patches for just 2 weeks after he tapered off. You know, just deep tissue massages can help a lot. So, I mean, this is just a completely different opioid detoxification plan and outcome. A good question I get a lot: how often to reduce dosage? What's the best schedule? Well, typically reducing your dosage every 7 to 14 days is often the most helpful and doable. Toward the end of a taper after long-term use, it might be a good idea to reduce every 28 days. That's for certain people and situations. For instance, someone that has been on long-term methadone or really long-term buprenorphine. Say someone's been on Suboxone for 17 years and they were on a high dosage a lot of that time. Well, at the end, they might want to reduce every 28 days for a couple of months or maybe even a year. Anyways, I should state at this point, disclaimer, I think I have one towards the end of the video. I want to mention it right now. I am a certified substance abuse counselor and a certified coach for recoverers, people are recovering, and I have other trainings as well, but I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. What this is right here is a visual look at an optimized opioid taper. Let me take a sip of my drink. This person right here on a taper plan used supplements, diet, sleep, movement, support accountability, a planner and journal, neurofeedback, and something called resilience training. Boy, that sure looks like an awful lot more than them just reducing a little bit of their medicine every week and not doing really anything else. So the more structure and the more amazing things you can do to optimize your physical, mental, spiritual, social, environmental health, the better for tapers. But that's an optimized opioid taper for sure. To give you more visual aids, here's an example of an advanced biohacking opioid taper. Supplements, diet, sleep, movement. They do an online support group. They've got a home infrared sauna they use on a regular basis. Grounding sheets, which they plug into the outlet and it connects to the ground, and then all of a sudden they get anti-inflammatories and antioxidants from actually the constituents of what the earth, the physical earth, is made up of. Pretty cool biohacking. And then they have prescribed lofexidine for once they come off of the taper. Lofexidine is the generic name for Lucemira, which is the only FDA-approved medicine for opioid withdrawal that's not itself an opioid, such as buprenorphine and methadone. Finally, here's one more visual aid. This is an example of a faith-based opioid taper. This person, before they even start tapering, they do the Whole30 diet, which cuts out sugar, dairy, and caffeine, I think, alcohol, and a few other things, grains. So they get really peak optimized, and then they start their taper. They start doing CrossFit, which is a form of exercise. They focus on healthy sleep habits, supplement with organ supplements, grass-fed New Zealand bovine organs. They do Christian individual counseling. They got a church community that they're a regular part of and get a lot of support from. They have supportive parents, and they have deep faith and a great relationship with their creator. So what are these pillars right here, these rocks, with the big one going up to the small one? That's a visual aid of what I refer to as the hierarchy of opioid recovery. At the bottom we have the foundation of all tapering and recovery treatment: biochemical, biological, the physical foundation. Opioids are drugs. They cause serious changes to your brain, a physical organ, the supercomputer of the brain. Traditional approaches tell you to go to AA or NA, admit powerlessness, all that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Opioids are, and nothing against those programs at all. They're wonderful for certain people, a lot of people. But guess what? Opioids do so much stuff to your brain. Once you take them and become dependent, if you're on them long term and then you come off, dopamine deficiency, endorphin deficiency, fight or flight, rebound effect, gastrointestinal issues, diarrhea. It's because they change your brain, you become dependent on it. You come off of it, your brain doesn't just return back to normal magically. It takes a while for the neurochemical soup to rebalance over the span of, at least a bare minimum, typically weeks, if not a couple of months. Tapering can help to, reduce the system, the shock and stuff, but correcting those imbalances in your brain that are leading to those symptoms is a process. So recovering from opioid dependence using either a cold turkey, a medical taper, doesn't matter what detoxification protocol you use. Here's the hierarchy of recovery that shows much higher success rates than when people don't use it. Physical foundation above that is the psychological domain of recovery and addiction. The social domain, spiritual, and then finally above that is transcendence. Not everyone is able to transcend a substance completely, but it's certainly possible. You might have noticed that loosely is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's much more closely resembles the biopsychosocial spiritual model of addiction and recovery, but that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we also have the opioid recovery hierarchy. Told you I want to do this in depth. Let's go big on this video, titrating examples. Let's go even deeper because I want you to be able to get so much value out of this video that you're just like blown away, and you have so much courage and hope now that you actually create your plan, talk to your doctor, and commit to tapering off and doing this right and becoming another success story. I really want to pump you up for this. So Claire's slow taper example. Weeks 1 and 2, she titrates from 4 milligrams of buprenorphine to 3.5 milligrams after spending 3 weeks biochemically optimizing. For weeks 3 and 4, she goes down to 3 milligrams per day total, continuing with biochemical restoration. Weeks 5 and 6, she's down to 2.5 milligrams per day. She begins doing daily neurofeedback training at home for 30 minutes. Week 7 and 8, this is where she drops to 2 milligrams per day, and she continues with her previous habits, and then this is where she begins journaling. Finally, down to weeks 9 to 12, that's where she goes to 1.5 milligram a day. As you see, first she was doing weeks 1 and 2, weeks 3 and 4, so it was 2 weeks. Now, once she drops down to 1.5 milligrams, that's a really low milligram, and then she does that for 9, 10, 11, 12. So she does that for actually 4 weeks. Then she does another 4 weeks, 1 milligram. Another 4 weeks at 0.75. Another 4 weeks at half a milligram. Another 4 weeks at a quarter milligram per day. And then for the last 2 weeks, she discontinues buprenorphine at the 0.25 milligram point. She does that for 4 weeks straight and uses a 0.1 milligram clonidine extended release every morning and night for the first 2 weeks off buprenorphine. Here's what her fast taper of that could look like. Week 1, she goes from 4 milligrams, drops at 25% right off the bat to 3 milligrams, and she only does it for a week. Then she's down to 2.5 milligrams, week 3, 2 milligrams, 4, 1.5, week 5, 1. Then week 6, 0.75, week 7, 0.5, week 8, she's down to 0.25, and week 9 as well. So really just going down fast, and at the very end she slows it up a little bit. Week 10, she discontinues, jumps off buprenorphine. She takes lofexidine 3 times a day, which is the one we talked about, the generic name for Lucimere, the only FDA-approved opioid withdrawal medicine that's not itself an opioid, for the first 7 days off buprenorphine. Now let's get even deeper. I told you, I promised I want to go real deep. So this is an example of her workday during her taper. 7 a.m., wakes up, drinks 12 ounces of spring water, brushes her teeth, showers, 20 minutes of yoga in a living room. That's a great morning routine. It's got just wonderful things for your health and to start the day in a better mood. Certainly having a proactive, healthy morning routine is one of the best things anybody can do to have a successful taper that ends up in achieving your goal. 8 a.m., she has green tea, 2 eggs, and sprouted toast, supplements, and a 10-minute walk to help digest. So green tea's high in L-theanine. It's got a little bit of caffeine. L-theanine boosts dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. Eggs are like a perfect protein. Protein's really good because the components of protein are amino acids, and amino acids lead to neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters lead to better brain health. At 9 to 5, she goes to work, and then she takes breaks throughout the day and stretches, goes for short walks, drinks water, has snacks and lunch. At 6 p.m., dinner, supplements, 30 minutes of journaling and reading, biofeedback training. After 9:30 p.m., she turns on candlelight, turns off all the other lights, devices off, before bed supplements, hot foot soak, in a bathtub with ancient minerals bath flakes. She turns the candlelight on and the devices off, so she stops staring at blue light so she can actually create melatonin so she can sink off to sleep like we're supposed to do. And she took foot soak in the ancient minerals bath flakes because they're high in magnesium chloride. Magnesium chloride is very good. It's the anti-stress mineral, and taking it in a bath form absorbs it through the skin, and it helps you relax, sleep better, helps to do many benefits actually. It's one of the healthiest things you can do on a taper. It's taking a ancient minerals bath flake bath or foot bath. Here is an example of her weekend day. 8:30, wakes up, drinks 12 ounces of spring water. It's real important to hydrate when you first wake up. You've been sleeping for however many hours, so you're dehydrated. A lot of people will just drink coffee first thing. You have to water, hydrate before you do anything else. Brushes her teeth, nutrients, and then 30 minutes of kickboxing at home on a YouTube video in her smart TV in the living room. Then she takes a shower. That's a great morning routine for the weekend too. 10 a.m. she has oolong tea, another form of tea that's higher in caffeine than green tea, not as high as black tea, also very high in L-theanine. So when people consume these teas that have caffeine, lower amounts of caffeine combined with the relaxing non-dietary amino acid theanine, it helps to give you like this synergy, and they kind of balance each other out. Proteins high in amino acids, which again are good for your brain health. And she takes her supplements, her after breakfast ones. 11 a.m. she goes on a 2-mile nature hike with family and packs chicken salad wraps for a picnic with ginger beer. Wow, that sounds fun for my family and I to go to do today. It's gorgeous outside. Maybe we'll go do that a little later. So nature's great. I mean, the longer you're out in nature, just enjoying that's just some of the healthiest thing you could ever do in your entire life. And yeah, chicken salad wraps, ginger beer is real good. Ginger beer for digestion, and it's got COX-2 inhibitors, which are the things that are in NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So ginger, particularly strong ginger, has COX-2 inhibitors in it too. It's a natural painkiller, natural anti-inflammatory, natural digestion booster. 3 p.m. she takes a 45-minute nap, then has a big raw coconut water with a probiotic supplement, just very hydrating after that time in the sun. Probiotics are great for the beneficial bacteria down in your digestive area to kill off all the bad bacteria, and lots of health benefits for there. Just love my probiotic supplements. At 5 p.m. she makes a delicious dinner with wild Alaskan sockeye salmon, one of the healthiest proteins in the world, broccolini, and a green salad with olive oil. 7:30 p.m. she watches a movie with her husband. 9:45 p.m. they make love. And 11 p.m. she takes her before bed supplements, brushes teeth, goes to sleep. Do you see just how detailed and structured and proactive, strategically proactive and intentional it is to be able to dial in an opioid taper? Because it's hard. Tapering off opioids is hard. I used to be addicted to opioids and many other drugs. Tapering is difficult if you're not in a really good position in life to do it. Here's some more taper tips. Automate. Set recurring alarms in your phone for the exact times you take supplements and opioids. This can actually help your brain and body so much. It helps them to know when they're going to get the things. And if you set your body on that timer, that clock timer, then it helps your body function better, at least through this process of tapering off opioids. You don't have to do that for the rest of your life. But anyway, schedule. The worst thing is to live in reaction on taper. Instead, create a schedule for every day and be proactive. Cultivate patience. Too many people on opioids are in quite a hurry to get off, even after being on them for years and years. You didn't get addicted overnight or dependent. I know there's different people watching this. Some people are definitely not psychologically addicted. They're just physically dependent, meaning their body needs it. Otherwise, they'll go in withdrawal. But I mean, they're not like I had psychological and physical addiction. I was a hardcore case. But anyways, be patient and keep your eyes on the long-term rewards. Stay consistent. Surrendering can work quite well if you put a spouse in charge of dishing out the opioids and keeping them in a safe that has a lock and a combination as well. Because otherwise it's just so easy, if you're in control of the medicine, if you're in control of the opioids, to take more than it says on the taper. Oh, I have a big day today. There's no way I can taper. Oh, I just need a little bit extra. I mean, it's when someone else has it and there's no way you can get it, just takes that conversation and that obsession, compulsion out of your brain. It usually does. Invest, if possible. I know not everyone can afford this type of stuff. I totally understand that, especially with the pandemic, the way things are. But if you can, invest in the best supplements, the best foods, and other important health boosters, because that stuff has a huge effect on whether you're able to actually taper off or not. Enlist help. You can work with professionals such as an addiction therapist or another type of therapist, a counselor, a coach, or so many other types of relevant specialists. That can help as well. And finally, the last slide, resilience training. Look at the free resources on resilience training on positivepsychology.com. I cannot recommend that enough. Also, check out my podcast episode called How to Taper Off a Substance Step by Step. Much more detailed than even this video, and it's free, and it's on elevationrecovery.com. But the link to that specific episode's in the description box. And finally, confidant. If possible, enlist the help of at least one person to be your confidant through this project. Now, final step, if you got value from this video, if you were just so stoked, I want you to go in the comment section right now and post a comment of one thing you're going to do and you're going to take action on immediately to be able to program and plan out and structure a better taper plan. Again, this is just informational use, not medical advice, any other type of advice. It's a YouTube video with info. Talk to your doctor before you try any of this stuff. Post a comment on there and commit to doing something, and then hold yourself responsible for that. I'm Matt Finch with Elevation Recovery. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.